All right. So we just
Thank
read
you, sir.
that book again. The children of Israel did evil. This is the fifth reference to it. And their height in Midian is northwest Saudi Arabia, most people believe, and they're prisoners for 7 years. And in this case, they're hiding out in the dens and the caves of the mountains. And again, you might be familiar with some of those, Steve. I remember asking you years ago at a Bible study about where David was hiding out from Saul, and you talked about down by the Red Sea or the Dead Sea. It's kind of flat, but then you go high up on cliffs.
Yeah, that's one thing I do remember is when we took the bus on down to the Dead Sea, on one side was the Dead Sea, on the other side was a bunch of cliffs.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think the tour guide pointed out there's a certain region, it's kind of barren, and there are places where it could easily be caves. Yeah, you see caves in the cliffs and everything. And the tour guide pointed out that when we passed this area where they kind of assumed that Sodom and Gomorrah was in that certain area too.
Yeah.
It's kind of real barren, but a lot of cliffs and you see some holes and caves.
Also, you see the Amalekites. Remember, they were the people that were supposed to have been wiped out because they attacked the straggler. They attacked the stragglers of Israel under Moses. And people from the east. Last week we had people from Mesopotamia. So this is just a word of people from the east. Here I got some here. Okay, I don't know how well you can see, but these are a cross section of Israel. Okay, the top one is from the Mediterranean Sea on the left, through what says the Dead Sea, and then going up into what is modern day Jordan. And then the bottom one is from kind of north to south. You see, it's very hilly. And it's like you said, even in our Franklin Mountains here in El Paso, there are caves, right? If you go up there, it's not that hard to find different type caves. And we know as you go into southern New Mexico, the Oregon Mountains and places, you're going to find stuff like that. And people have traditionally, how many know, what's the name of the park south of Alamogordo? It's just 10
White
miles.
Sands.
Fort Grande.
No, it's a park, and it's just about 5 miles south of the city now.
Dog Canyon.
Well, it is Dog Canyon, but that's where
John Fraser.
Geronimo hung out, right? He would go up there, the troops would chase him, and he'd run up there and hide. And you're trying to go up the mountain, and that you were easily picked off. So he was able to use that Dog Canyon. It's called Someone Park now, but Dog Canyon is there. But we have that part.
Not Tom Lee, is it?
No, it's not Tom Lee. I might think of it before the end of the lesson today. All right, I've been there one time. Okay, so very good, Melody. Jess, would you mind reading? Put that sweet coffee tea down and unmute.
Yes. Judges 6:4-6. Then they would encamp against them and destroy the produce of the earth as far as Gaza, and leave no substance for Israel, neither sheep nor ox nor donkey, for they would come up with their livestock in their tents, coming in as numerous as locusts. Both they and their camels were without number, and they would enter the land to destroy it. So Israel was greatly impoverished because of the Midianites, and the children of Israel cried out to the Lord.
Mm-hmm. I call this the scorched earth campaign, right? Anyone heard of scorched earth? Where you wipe out all the resources. It's what Sherman did in his march from Atlanta to Savannah, Georgia. He just burned everything, burned the farms, tore up the railroads, tore down any factories or whatever. So you can't sustain, but they would do it. They would leave no sustenance. And they would come. And again, talking about the history of the Bible, this is how the old world was, right? If you weren't part of a city, this is why you had kings of Jerusalem, kings of this city, kings of this, because people would band together for protection. Otherwise, just larger people would come and steal your stuff, right? I mean, Europe went through this. You're kind of hit. We see those movies about the knights, but they would build the castles, right? That would be the protection. You'd grow the food, and you would go, and much like Israel is doing. And so people that were stronger than you would just come and take what they wanted and not really care. And so Israel became very impoverished. And And this is one of the things when we're disobeying the Lord, right? We tend to find we're impoverished, right? We lead without God, we lead impoverished lives, don't we? We may have physical possessions, riches, and stuff like that, but the soul wise, we lead an impoverished life. And so the children of Israel realize, man, we've done wrong. So they cry out to the Lord. Remember the pattern? You do okay, you do all right, you rebel against the Lord, the enemies come, you cry out to the Lord. And when they cry out to the Lord, said the Lord would send judges, but here he's going to be a little different tact. So I've got Sarah. Do you mind reading? You were next.
And it came to pass when the children of Israel cried out to the Lord because of the Midianites, that the Lord sent a prophet to the children of Israel, who said to them, Thus says the Lord God of Israel, I brought you up from Egypt and brought you out of the house of bondage, and I delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians and out of the hand of all who oppressed you, and drove them out before you and gave you their land. Also I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not fear the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you dwell, but you have not obeyed my voice.
Mm-hmm. So instead of just right away raising up a judge, a battle leader, he sends a prophet and to correct the nation. You know, I brought you out of Egypt. I gave you this land. Interesting, the phrase, not fear the gods of the Amorites. I Googled it, and it's not really written specifically prior to this. It's requoted in 2 Kings 17:5. But remember, they weren't supposed to look at the gods of these nations when they came in. It said, don't even go look and think how did they serve gods and stuff and look into it, because they will be snares for you. So they began to fear the God. We're going to see, and you mentioned, someone mentioned Jeremiah earlier, is that they would say, well, we're going to worship. When we worship the Queen of Heaven, we weren't starving. Now we're starving trying to worship Jehovah. So it's always that snare for people. This habit of who we do is we forget about God. Trouble comes upon us, and we want to blame everybody but ourselves.
And there was a tendency in the ancient world that people believed that there were gods who governed, you know, in the same way the kings governed their own territory, the gods governed their own territory also. And that when you moved to a new place, you needed to find out who those gods were and how to appease and deal with them. So to have a God like the God of Israel, who was over everything everywhere, who would protect his people no matter what, no matter where they were. That was kind of a novel concept in the ancient world.
Yes, very good point. Very good point, Shotzi. We forget that. Steve and I were talking about the classes. He was saying that Dr. Jim said in the Genesis classes that, you know, to understand either testament, you have to be familiar with the other testament. And the idea is that, yeah, the concept of understanding that there's one God over everything. We see that preached in the book of Acts, right? On Mars Hill when he's speaking to the Gentiles. I'm talking about your unknown God. You have that altar. This is the God, the real true God that serves everything. But yeah, a very foreign concept. One God in charge of the Lord our God is one. Very good point, Shotzi. Shotzi, you're reading.
You're muted.
Still muted.
Judges 6:11-13. Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth tree, which was in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Bezerite, while his son Gideon threshed wheat in the winepress in order to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor." Gideon said to me, "Oh, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles, which our fathers told us about, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites."
There's a ton in this slide, isn't there? Just a ton. First of all, we deal with the angel of the Lord, right? We had this happen at Bochum. And again, most people feel like this is the pre-incarnate Christ, right? Because this man's going to make an offering. Gideon's going to make an offering to him, and he's going to accept the offering, right? The angel of the Lord. Again, angel is messenger of the Lord, came and sat down. Pay attention to that word, Abiezrites has come up again. And so we meet this man Gideon, who we've all done, and he's threshing wheat on the wine press. Why? Because they're being scorched earth, right? He's hiding. He's scared. He's hiding his crop from the Midianites so they don't steal his crop. And so I love the word of the Lord to him here is the Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor. Right? Wait, he's hiding. Okay. And I want to, you know, I kind of look at this as how God looks at us sometimes. Okay. And also, we talked a little bit about the class too, is God deals with us graciously, right? And so he calls him a mighty man of valor. And yet Gideon's response is, why? Why has this happened, Lord? And again, so many people ask why. And I've shared this before. I've met Christians who've been hurt by church or other Christians or something else, and they quit going to church. And 2 years down the road, they just get their teeth kicked in by Satan. You know, they've walked kind of out from the protection of the Lord, and they've made choices that haven't been good, and it just comes back and bites them big time. And what do they ask? Why? Where is God? Why did God forsake me? And it's not that God forsook you. It's the place, the land of Goshen he had you to be in. You kind of left that place. And he said, where are all those miracles? You know, here we are hiding here, you know, but now you forsook, you know, he's saying, you forsook us, Lord. Well, we know why. The prophet told him why before, right? But this is kind of, why are these things going on? Why is our country being overrun by immigration? Why is fentanyl and drug abuse so high in our nation? Why is the divorce and remarriage high as it's ever been? You know, why is Alzheimer and what's the one the kids have high? You know, just getting higher. Yes. Why is it getting people? Why? Well, we're probably a nation that's forsaken God, haven't we? And we've gone off on our own, and it's like, well, why did you let this happen, God? I love you. You know, I mean, I love you, but you know, my statutes and regulations are for your protection, not so you do what I say. You know,
which reminds me, I think of the opposite of this is David.
Mm-hmm.
David standing up and said, who is this calling us, you know, out?
Yeah, who is this calling us out? Yeah, very good, very good. So we had Bruce, you're up.
I don't know what I've done, but I have lost your shared screen, and I don't have that.
I can read it.
All right, well, let Steve read it.
Okay, Judges 6:14-18. Then the Lord turned to him and said, go in this might of yours, and you shall save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent you? So he said to him, oh my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. And the Lord said to him, surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat the Midianites as one man. Then he said to him, if now I have found favor in your sight, then show me a sign that it is you who talk with me. Do not depart from here, I pray, until I come to you and bring out my offering and set it before you. And he said, I will wait until you come back. Okay.
Notice this line says, the Lord turned and said to him, not the angel of the Lord. And Bruce went out and's come back in. Okay. All right. Again, go in the might. You guy that was hiding, you man of valor, go in the might, and the Lord shall save the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent you? And then he gives, you know, send someone, Lord, the harvest is white, send someone. And he says, all right, Shotzi, you go. And you go, but Lord, I'm the weakest of the Fry clan or whatever, you know, I'm too old, or I'm too busy, you know, I got this. It's who else did this in the Old Testament? Famous.
That was Moses.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing as Moses, who, and we will see Saul does the same thing. I'm the least of the tribe of Benjamin. My family's the least in this. So he says, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh. We're nothing, Lord. How can you do it?
And what was it, Isaiah, who said, I'm a man of unclean lips and live among people with unclean lips?
Yeah,
One of the prophets said that.
that's Isaiah.
When he-
When he saw heaven in Isaiah 6, that's what he
Yeah.
said.
Well, and I think too, God doesn't pick in most cases the obvious champion.
Mhm.
I think he delights in using the weak and ignored people in the world to accomplish great things. Because then we know that's not because that person is such a, paragon of
Mhm.
virtue or, so strong or so eloquent or whatever. We know then that that is something that was a gift from the Lord, and that it's the result of the Spirit of the Lord working inside that person that makes their ministry so awesome.
Yeah, you did a good job. You pretty much quoted First Corinthians when Paul talks about God chooses the weak things in the world to confound the wise. It kind of also reminds me of, I think it's Romans 4, where something, if I can paraphrase it, or something that says, God calls those things which are not as though they were.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one, Mark? Did I get that one close enough?
You're close enough on that one, and you're right on 1 Corinthians 7. That one I don't know the exact thing. A good one. I'm the weakest, and then the Lord says, "Surely," again, the Lord speaking to him, "Surely I will be with you, and you will defeat them as one man." That's kind of we're going to see that's kind of foreshadowing here, right? Then Gideon says, "If I found favor in your sight, show me a sign." So Gideon's okay. I'm starting to believe this, but you got to kind of show me. Remember what we had last week with Barak? He said, "Okay, I'll go fight him, but I'm not going unless you go, Deborah." And Deborah said, "Okay, I'll go, but you're going to lose the glory, uh, of this battle. You're not going to get the glory of this battle because a woman will kill Jabin, or it's not Jabin, it's the other one." Okay. And he goes, "Okay, I'll wait until you bring the offering. I'll wait until you bring back the offering." And what's always amazed me, this is similar to the one Abraham had, the two people going by him. Okay. And I don't know, anyone ever cook a goat?
I don't have enough patience.
Yeah, I don't think you prepare a goat in like 30 minutes, right?
I've eaten goat that's been cooked, but I've not ever cooked it myself.
I mean, the same thing. Abraham went out and killed a fatted lamb or whatever for him. It says so he prepared a goat. So we're talking hours. Okay, and I've always kind of we kind of think, oh, he brought him an offering. Well, he didn't. Stick it in the microwave, pull out of the freezer, and stick it in the microwave. Some unleavened bread he probably had, and some flour, and he put it. I'm sorry, someone should read this. How about Jeffrey? Do you mind reading this slide?
Sure. Just give you a quick heads up. My internet is really bad, so if it's choppy, I apologize.
That's okay. And if you
Okay.
drop out, I saw you dropped out. I'll keep an eye on coming back.
It's
Okay.
pretty bad. Thank you, sir. Judges 6:19-21. So Gideon went in and prepared a young goat and unleavened bread from an ephah of flour. The meat he put in a basket, and he put it in a broth in a pot. And he brought them out to him under the terebinth tree and presented them. The angel of the God said to him, "Take the meat and the unleavened bread and lay them on this rock and pour out the broth." And he did so. Then the angel of the Lord put out the end of the staff that was in his hand and touched the meat and the unleavened bread. And fire arose out from the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened bread. And the angel of the Lord departed out of his sight.
Mm-hmm. So again, we see the angel of the Lord and the Lord used interchangeably. Plus, the angel of the Lord here took an offering, right? Other angels, don't worship me, you worship God alone. So, here is probably a pre-incarnate Christ there. And so he lays out this thing, he touches it with his staff, and boom, and then he departs out of his sight. We're back to Steve.
Let me try now.
Okay, go ahead, Bruce.
Judges 6:22-24. Now Gideon perceived that he was the angel of the Lord. So Gideon said, Alas, O Lord God, for I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. Then the Lord said to him, Peace be with you, do not fear, you shall not die. So Gideon built an altar there to the Lord and called it, The Lord is Peace. To this day, it is still an Ophrah of the Abiezrites.
Yeah, so the Abiezrites is his family. Remember, I think I got a footnote on the next slide on that. Again, he thought he was going to die. So the angel, the angel, it says here, says, "Don't worry, you will not die." So he builds an altar there to the Lord, and he calls it "The Lord is Peace." Again, the Hebrew is Jehovah Shalom. People know the Jehovah Nisei, Jehovah Rapha. There's the 7 names of God used in the Old Testament. When he provided the lamb for Abraham, it was Jehovah Jireh, right? The Lord provides. Here is the Lord is peace, is what the Hebrew is here. Okay, Steve.
So is this the first time that anybody's seen the face of God or Jesus?
Well, I think Abraham did. Remember, the Lord was there with him.
True.
Yeah, I think he's appeared.
I think Lot saw him.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a difference between seeing God in human form and seeing the glory of the Lord.
Yeah.
Because
True.
it's the glory of the Lord that, where Moses requested to see that. And God said, you can't see me face to face, but you can see me from behind.
Yeah. I love 1 John, the first epistle of John, that which we beheld, that's which we held with our hands, we beheld his glory. When they realized later he was God in the flesh, when even, they walked around with him. But now after reflecting that which we beheld the glory of God. Good point, Shotzi. Steve.
Judges 6:25-27. Now it came to pass the same night that the Lord said to him, Take your father's young bull, the second bull of 7 years old, and tear down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the wooden image that is beside it, and build an altar to the Lord your God on top of this rock in the proper arrangement. And take the second bull and offer a burnt offering with the wood of the image on which you shall cut down. So Gideon took 10 men from among his servants and did as the Lord had said to him. But because he feared his father's household and the men of the city too much to do it by day, he did it by night.
Mm-hmm. So he's still a little bit antsy,
but he did it.
But he did it. Good point. Good point. Now I read this different today. I never read it. I thought he had 2 bulls, but it says he's just had 1 bull, but it's the second bull of his father's. Does everyone else read it that way?
Well, I remember looking it up one time in a commentary, and I guess if I remember right, the commentary said this is a hard passage to translate.
Yeah. Well, and again, this is I'm not telling you this is the fact or the theology behind it, but I thought interesting the second bull, why not the firstborn?
Well, it's also, it in the first phrase, it explains, take your father's young bull. There's probably the alpha bull, and then here's this young bull or the second bull.
Yeah. Also, and I thought the first bull was dedicated to the Lord. Remember, they were supposed to take and offer something else for the bull because it was dedicated to the Lord. May or may not be appropriate here. I was just curious. That just kind of caught me. Notice his father has an altar to Baal. And somehow Gideon knew how to build the raw altar the last time, or, to make the sacrifice. And here he knew how to set the altar up in order. So he's apparently not dumb. So he took it down and he did it at night. By the way, the wooden image is literally Asherah, which we saw. They did evil in the sight of the Lord. They worshiped the Baals and Asherah. So, tear down the altar to Baal and the wooden image, which is the Asherah.
I also thought from this passage, it says he took 10 men from among his servants, and did as the Lord had said to him. This, and then where they confront his father, and his father passes judgment essence, makes me think that Gideon wasn't necessarily the lowest in his clan, and that his clan was the lowest in there. This indicates to me that he did have a certain amount of importance as far as his family was concerned. But as I understand it, in that culture, it was common to say, well, I'm the least, my family's the least, that you tended to present yourself in humility.
Yes, I believe you got a point there. He took 10 of his servants. I don't know how many you have, more than 10 people working for you. Not a lot of us. And so there you go. So he did have some preeminence. So they go and let's see, we are Melanie.
Judges 6:28-30. And when the men of the city arose early in the morning, there was the altar of Baal torn down, and the wooden image that was beside it was cut down. And the second bull was being offered on the altar to which it had been built. So they said to one another, who has done this thing? And when they had inquired and asked, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing. Then the men of the city said to Joash, bring out your son that he may die, because he has torn down the altar of Baal, and because he has cut down the wooden image that was beside it.
Okay. And then interesting, I just saw this. Your son must die because of a religious right. I'll throw that one out there for you to think about. Jesse.
There too. But Joash said to all who stood against him, you plead for Baal? Would you save him? Let the one who would plead for him be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him plead for himself, because his altar has been torn down. Therefore, on that day, he called him Jerubbaal, saying, let Baal plead against him because he has torn down his altar.
So Joash stands up for his son here, doesn't he? And he, interesting enough, if Baal is a god, let him defend himself. Kind of reminds me of Elisha on Mount Carmel, right? When he's telling the worshipers, where's your God? Cry out louder. Maybe he's asleep, maybe he's going to the bathroom. Cry out louder. But if he goes down, so they call him. I think we say it Jerubbaal. I don't know if we really know how to pronounce it, but it's a fun name to say. You say that 3 times real fast: Jerubbaal, 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 and people think you got the gift of tongues. And but anyway, which literally means the Baal pleads. Okay, if Baal's God, let him deal with my son. You don't need to kill him. So
it's interesting that it was Gideon's father Joash that had the altar to Baal and had the Asherah pole, and yet so that would indicate he must have had some kind of priestly office for Baal, and yet he's the first one to come to Gideon's defense.
Yeah,
that seems kind of odd.
Interesting. There's a lot in this chapter in there, just a tremendous amount just beneath the surface. So Gideon obeys God, and they threaten to kill him, right? So it's going well. This is usually yes, Lord, yes, Lord. Okay. Good deal. So hang on, I'm lost. So I got this.
Sarah.
There we go. And after Jesse is Sarah.
Then all the Midianites and Amalekites, the people of the east, gathered together, and they crossed over and encamped in the valley of Jezreel. But the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon. Then he blew the trumpet, and the Abiezrites gathered behind him. And he sent messengers throughout all Manasseh, who also gathered behind him. He also sent messengers to Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, and they came up to meet them.
So the people gather again. He's burnt down this altar. The people gather. We're not told it's because of that. It's just a time. And here we have that phrase again: the Spirit of the Lord, the Ruach Yehovah, the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon. The Spirit of the Lord came upon people in the Old Testament, whereas you have the Holy Spirit dwelling inside of you. Okay, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. He blew a trumpet. And the Abiezrites, again, that's his family, just to kind of put it in context. We're going to see that again in a different context. And he sent messages all through Manasseh. And I got another little map for you. Again, hopefully I could have blown that up a little bit bigger. But you have the Midianites, the Amalekites, and people from the east coming and attacking this area. He's in Manasseh. And he calls these areas. It doesn't say Issachar. Issachar's never mentioned here. Don't know why, if they're just considered part of the other tribes or not. So we see, now we get the famous fleece story. So Shotzi, you want to start us?
Judges 6:36 through 38. So Gideon said to the Lord, if you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, look, I shall put a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece only, and it is dry on all the ground, then I shall know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said. And so it was. When he rose early the next morning and squeezed the fleece together, he wrung the dew out of the fleece, a bowl full of water.
Yeah. So this is the famous fleece. He said, okay, Lord, if you're really speaking to me, even though I saw you burn up the sacrifice and disappear into heaven, give me a sign, and there's questions about that. Are we allowed to give God fleece? And I think it's kind of the attitude of your heart too. Okay. And Lord, I don't know. I'm doing, just give me, and I do believe sometimes he gives fleeces. Again, I always use the example of the Lord when people are kind of questioning is when Gabriel came to Zechariah, the high priest, to announce the birth of John the Baptist. He said, you don't believe? He was mute until the son was born because he didn't believe. When he told a teenage girl, you're going to bear a baby, she said, how can I? So she asked a question. He didn't punish her, but one was one of the high priests of Israel. The other one was a young girl. So I think it's kind of attitude of heart. We don't want to base our life. I don't think you want to overuse these things. Coincidences do happen. Coincidences don't happen. Okay. But
what about Jesus is saying to his disciples, "O ye of little faith," or
yeah.
"Where is your faith?"
Mm-hmm.
So like you say, an attitude of the heart, if you really have faith that the Lord will do what you're requesting, and if you have the belief that you're asking within the proper will of the Lord, you shouldn't have to throw out a fleece.
Yeah. So the Lord's gracious, right? He answers this fleece. The ground is dry, and he squeezes the little bit of wool there and gets a bowl full of water. So he's ready to go, right? Bruce.
Judges 6:39-40. Then Gideon said to God, do not be angry with me, but let me speak just once more. Let me test, I pray, just once more with the fleece. Let it now be dry only on the fleece, but on all the ground let there be dew. And God did so that night. It was dry on the fleece only, but there was dew on all the ground.
Mm-hmm. Don't be angry, Lord, but I still need. And so he asks for the exact opposite, and the Lord gives him to it. God's very gracious to him here. Okay. I like that, Shotzi, that you brought up the illogical or not really perceived people, God is using. And that's the end of the chapter. Okay. So we're in chapter 7 now, and that'll be Jeffrey. You mind starting us?
Surely. Judges chapter 7, 1-3. Then Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the people who were with him rose early and encamped beside the well of Harod. So the camp of the Midianites was on the north side of them by the hill of Morah, and in the valley. And the Lord said to Gideon, the people who are with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, and lest Israel claimed glory for itself against me, saying, my own hand saved me. Now, therefore, proclaim in the hearing of the people, saying, whoever is fearful and afraid, let them turn and depart at once from Mount Gideon. And 22,000 of the people returned, and 10,000 remained.
Mm-hmm. So he calls all the people, and the army of the Midianites and others are gathered, and the Lord says, there's too many of you, and lest you claim the glory for itself, for yourself, saying my own hand saved me. I'm going to show you that I'm the Lord doing that. So you have too many people. So Gideon asks who's ever fearful. And I don't remember where it is. There's a place in the Old Testament where he gives statues. That was the one thing he said, whoever is fearful can go home. Whoever just got married can go home. If you just bought a piece of property and haven't really settled it yet, you can go home. But anyway, 22,000 left, 10,000 remained, about a ratio actually of 2.2 to 1, right? I can see a little map. See, I blew it up a little bit, but there's actually a mountains, again, the Bible didn't happen a long time ago in a land far away. This is Tel Morah in the picture, and that's where Tel Morah is up there. You can see this Sea of Galilee pretty close into this area right here. And this is the area we're talking about. So the Midianites are camped north of Tel Morah. Let's see. I got Bruce, Jeffrey, Steve.
Judges 7:4. But the Lord said to Gideon, the people are still too many to bring them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. Then it will be that then it will be that of whom I say to you, this one shall go with you, the same shall go with you. And of whomever I say to you, this one shall not go with you, the same shall not go.
Okay, so you got 22,000 people, and we're going to see it's going to describe the Midianites as, sand of the seas or whatever, a bunch of them, uncountable. But you got 22,000, it's still too much on me. So we're going to do a little test, and we're going to divide the people again. Melanie.
So he brought the people down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, everyone who laps from the water with his tongue, as a dog laps, you shall set apart by himself. Likewise, everyone who gets down on his knees to drink. And the number of those who lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, was 300 men. But all the rest of the people got down on their knees to drink water.
Okay. So if I understand this, it says 300 people took water and put it in their hands and brought it up and drank like this, okay? And the rest of the people got down on their hands and knees and stuck their face in the water. I've heard teaching on this. Well, they were more alert. I don't know. It may just be the Lord's way of doing it. And because we see it's by these 300, we're going to say. So Jess, do you mind reading 7 through 8?
And the Lord, by the 300 men who lapped, I will save you and deliver the Midianites into your hand. Let all the other people go, every man to his place. So the people took provisions and their trumpets in their hand, every man to his retained. Now the camp of Midian was below him in the valley.
Okay, so the Lord says, keep the 300. Let all the other people go. The people took their provisions. Interesting enough, I mean, you kind of had to, it wasn't like that you go, those of you in the modern military, they fed you, didn't they? They brought the food with you. They gave you the uniforms. In those days, you brought a lot of your own stuff. We see a picture of that when Jesse sent his son David to go see his 3 older brothers fighting, right? He took bread and stuff for his brother, and he said, take these excellent cheeses to their sergeants and give them, so they depended on the people. So, you not only did you take your trumpet, but you had to take some of your provisions, your backpack, maybe your bed, everything, and go home. Let's see. Sarah.
It happened on the same night that the Lord said to him, Arise, go down against the camp, for I have delivered it into your hand. But if you are afraid to go down to the camp with Purah, your servant, and you shall hear what they say, and afterward your hands shall be strengthened to go down against the camp. Then he went down with Purah, his servant, to the outpost of the armed men who were in the camp.
So the Lord is gonna again encourage Gideon here. He's gonna send him down, and he's gonna show him that I'm going to deliver that. Again, I have delivered them into your hand. But if you're afraid to go alone, go ahead and take your servant. Purah is probably his right hand, probably his closest servant. We know he took 10 servants before, but go ahead and take Purah. Reminds me of another story in the Old Testament. Anyone remember what I'm talking about?
I think David would take Ahab with them, or Joash with them or something. I can't quite remember.
The one I was thinking of, you're probably right. The one I was thinking above is when Jonathan, remember, went down and he took his servant, and he said, we'll go to them, and if they see, and we'll stand up, and if they say, I may have this backwards, come down here, we'll fight you, or we'll come up to you and fight you. We know the Lord's delivering our hands, and him and his servant have a victory. Kind of remind me of that, because sometimes when we take people with us, it's kind of a drag. We looked at Abraham and Lot. We talked about that last week, but here he goes. Go ahead, and I'm going to go down there. You're going to hear something that's going to encourage you. And if you're afraid to go alone, take your servant Purah with you. So again, God is very gracious to Gideon here,
I think Purah probably knew the enemy. A little bit about the enemy that, take him.
Point. Very good point.
Well, and keep in mind too, he started out with, if I remember correctly, like 50,000 men, and now he's down to 300.
Yeah.
And in the last few years, God has demonstrated to me what an incredible show off he is.
Yeah.
And the way that he's setting this up, the only way who's going to be able to take credit for this victory is the Lord.
All right. Who read last? I'm sorry, I'm lost. Okay, so Shatsa, you're up.
Judges 17 verses 12 and 13. Now the Midianites and Amalekites, all the people of the east, were lying in the valley as numerous as locusts, and their camels were without number, as the sand by the seashore in multitude. And when Gideon had come, there was a man telling a dream to his companion. He said, I have had a dream. To my surprise, a loaf of barley bread tumbled down into the camp of Midian. It came to a tent and struck it so that it fell and overturned, and the tent collapsed.
So you just said, Shots, he's down to 300 people. He's gone down there with his bud. So how many are they against? They're like the locusts, right? Anyone ever been through a locust infestation? I went through a minor one in Ohio. It wasn't where they cleared the trees, but we know in Egypt, and there's videos out there where they come and they will just destroy the crops. I think if you see the movie Pearl S. Buck movie. I can't remember what the name of it is.
Grapes of Wrath or something like that.
No, it's not the Grapes of Wrath. That's Steinbeck. I'll remember in a minute. But the locusts come through in China and they just kill the crops,
Oh.
destroy the crops, and the people starve or whatever. It's just a frightening thing. It's happened throughout history. But they're like the locusts. They're camels without number, and like sand on the seashore. And he's got 300. God's and God, I could use those other. The rest of the 32,000 might help here. And he hears this man telling about a dream. Okay. God uses dreams, doesn't he?
Mhm.
And I don't know if you've ever had I've had a few godly dreams in my life, and some of them good, some of them bad. I mean, some of them are warning, some of them excellent. I've had a few pizza dreams, I call it, where whatever I ate or whatever I watched on TV, I dreamed about that. But, so he has this dream, and a loaf of barley bread tumbles into the camp and it strikes down this tent, and the tent collapses. Oh my gosh. And his companion is going to interpret that dream for him, isn't he? Or what he believes the dream says. And that is Bruce.
Judges 7:14-15. Then his companion answered and said, "This is nothing else but the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. Into his hand God has delivered Midian and the whole camp." And so it was, when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation, that he worshipped. He returned to the camp of Israel and said, "Arise, for the Lord has delivered the camp of Midian into your hand."
Mm-hmm. I think he's finally convinced, right? I think so this companion said, "This is nothing else but, how does he know Gideon and the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash?" So he knows it. And God has delivered Midian. So he's hearing this guy saying, "We're doomed. God is going to deliver us into Gideon." And so when he heard it, I love it. And its interpretation, he worshiped. Love that. And he returned to the camp of Israel, and now he's ready. "Arise, the Lord has delivered the Lord." I like this about Gideon's got this right. The Lord has delivered the camp of Midian into your hand. Okay, not I'm going to deliver, the Lord has delivered. So I like this Gideon guy. Jeffrey.
Judge 7:16-18. Then he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet into every man's hand with empty pitchers and torches inside the pitchers. And then he said to them, "Look at me and do likewise. Watch, and when I come to the edge of the camp, you shall do as I do. When I blow the trumpet, and all who are with me, then you will also blow the trumpet on every side of the whole camp, and say, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon."
Okay, so he comes up with a strategy. He breaks them down into 3, and apparently they're surrounding the area where these guys are. And he gives each man a trumpet, and he says, "You watch me and do what I do." Paul says, "Use me as an example," okay, or whatever. "And when I blow the trumpet," and I love this, he says, "Shout, not the sword of Gideon, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon." He knows they're afraid of the sword of Gideon, but to me, he's given the Lord preeminence here. So I do like this about Gideon, is that it's not going to his head like it goes to a lot of people's head. We're back to Steve.
Judges 7:19-21. So Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the outpost of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just as they had posted the watch, and they blew the trumpets and broke the pitchers that were in their hands. Then the 3 companies blew the trumpets and broke the pitchers. They held the torches in their left hands, and the trumpets in their right hands for blowing. And they cried, "The sword for the Lord and of Gideon." Every man stood in his place all around the camp, and the whole army ran and cried out and fled.
Mm-hmm. So it shocked them, didn't it? I mean, Gideon took one group of 100, and there's 3 groups. And again, blows the trumpet, and they break the clay pitchers, and they've got the sword. So this enemy, it's night, and all of a sudden they see all these flames, and they see all these horns, and they apparently assume they're surrounded by a huge mass, right? And so the whole army ran and cried out and fled. Interesting, a lot of times in the Old Testament when the armies would flee, well, we know they do that because we're going to see it here later, is that they would just leave all their provisions and their booty and bounty they had stolen from other people, and people would kind of clean up. Melanie.
Judges 3:22-23. When the 300 blew the trumpets, the Lord set every man's sword against his companion throughout the whole camp. And the army fled to Beth Acacia towards Zerah, as far as the border of Abel Meholah by Tabbath. And the men of Israel gathered together from Naphtali, Asher, and all of Manasseh, and pursued the Midianites.
Okay, so and this seems to be a common response sometimes when the Lord raises up. They turn their swords on each other, the Amalekites and the Midianites, and then they begin to flee, and they're going back to the east of the Jordan River. I've got you, the circles where the battle began, so they begin fleeing down here to get away. Again, I got your map on the left, so they're being routed, and Gideon is chasing them, and then the people are joining him. All the rest of the people, everyone's on the bandwagon, right? Now, ding, 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 ding. Jess, we gave you a long one.
That's all right. Then Gideon sent messengers throughout all the mountains of Ephraim, saying, "Come down against the Midianites and seize from them the watering places as far as Beth-barah and the Jordan." Then all the men of Ephraim gathered together and seized the watering places as far as Beth-barah and the Jordan, and they captured two princes of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeb. They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb, and Zeb they killed at the winepress of Zeb. They pursued Midian and brought the heads of Zeb, the heads of Zeb to Gideon on the other side of the Jordan. End of the chapter.
I don't think it's the end of the chapter.
Wow. So he decapitated Gideon, right?
Is there more to this chapter?
I think so, doesn't it? I mean, let me look online.
I think we go to 8.
Because they get angry. They get angry at
That's
Gideon,
8.
and then he's a diplomat at the end. He's quite a diplomat.
Yeah, that's good. You know the story. Yeah, I think that's the next chapter, 8:1.
Yeah, this is the end of this chapter. Yeah.
So Gideon sends messengers to Ephraim now and come down against the Midianites. When you're stealing the watering, that's the wells and springs and everything like that. What does that ensure? You control the land, right? Go down and seize the watering spaces. And they captured Oreb and Zeb, and they killed them. And yeah, they brought I know you're looking at the heads. They brought the heads of Zeb to Gideon on the other side of the Jordan. So Israel has a great victory. Everyone should be happy, right? Again, you can see here and pay attention to the city of Succoth and Penuel. We might have another map of those there. And then here's what Steve remembers.
And I apologize for that. I guess I'm going to claim old age as usual on that one.
Yeah. I get cutting and pasting, and I have left off verses. Melanie caught me one night. Melanie fell asleep. She said, if I fall asleep, don't wake me up. I think she's taking a break. But anyway, all right. So everyone's happy. We had a victory, right? Well, what's wrong with, what's the problem with Christianity? It's people. Christians. Okay. Here we go. But again, this is Old Testament. These are the children of Israel. So let's go. Let's see. Just read that. Sarah.
Now the men of Ephraim said to him, "Why have you done this to us by not calling us when we went to fight with the Midianites?" And they reprimanded him sharply. So he said to them, What have I done now in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? God has delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb, and Zeb. And what was I able to do in comparison with you? Then their anger toward him subsided when he said that.
Yeah, kind of amazing human nature. Why didn't you call us sooner? Well, he was kind of under strict orders from God, right? You take these 300, you know. So number one did that, and they reprimanded him sharply. So everyone's happy till the spoils come, or
I was
whatever.
gonna say, and I don't think they wanted to be involved in the fighting, but they did want to gather the loot afterwards.
Yeah, the bandwagon. The bandwagon. Okay. And I love this. And Steve, you used the word diplomatic. I love look at how he answers them. What does Proverbs says, a soft answer turns away wrath. So he's gonna say, what have I done? What have I done? And come look at you guys. You guys are awesome, you know. And I love this. Isn't the vintage, the grapes of Ephraim, where you're from, better than the vintage of? And again, he's mentioning his family. He's not even mentioning Manasseh. You know, you guys are better than me. You know, your grapes are better than our grapes. And look, God gave you these these two princes, Oreb and Zeb. You know, what can I do with you? And I go, oh, okay. Again, this is some great reading, guys. I'm having a lot of fun with this. Again, I said the Old Testament is the heart of man.
I was gonna say earlier too, if anyone's a fan of VeggieTales, they have a really good rendition of this story.
Oh, do they? VeggieTales?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're a little marching band when they go up with their trumpets against the other army.
I may have to watch that with Sarah then. I may have to go ahead and watch that. Thank you. Shotzi, were you going to say something?
Oh no, I'm ready to read if you need me to.
All righty, let's go ahead and read Judges 8:4-6.
When Gideon came to the Jordan, he and his 300 men who were with him crossed over, exhausted, but still in pursuit. Then he said to the men of Succoth, please give loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they are exhausted, and I am pursuing Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian. And the leaders of Succoth said to him, are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna in your hand, that we should give bread to your army?
Ouch. I like the way you read that, Shotzi, because that's probably the tone they said it in Hebrew and anything. So he comes with these 300 men. They're exhausted. So he goes to the city Succoth. Succoth is this children of Israel city, right? And he asks him, please give us some bread, because we're pursuing your enemies. Now, do you think Midian was leaving Succoth fine when it was going up into Manasseh and stealing stuff? I doubt it. Wasn't
Well,
like
and I can't imagine that, especially if they're exhausted, they've been up all night. I mean, they probably look like a pretty ragtag group. And if they do annoy their enemies, you know, I think they you can kind of understand that they're going, no, we're not helping you. You guys, there's no way you're going to beat these kings.
yeah, they're kind of hedging their bets the other way, right? You
Yeah.
know, we help you, and then these guys come back, we're going to pay the price. But I love Gideon by now is trusting the Lord pretty much. Come on, next slide. Let's go. All right, Shotzi, Bruce.
Judges 8:7-9. So Gideon said, for this cause, when the Lord has delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, then I will tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. And he went up from there to Penuel and spoke to them in the same way. And the men of Penuel answered him as the men of Succoth had answered. So he also spoke to the men of Penuel, saying, when I come back in peace, I will tear down this tower.
Mr. Putin, tear down this wall. So Gideon said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to whoop you boys, you know, to what he says to Succoth. And Penuel, interesting, Penuel, El is God, right? It's actually literally face of God is the name of the city. Spoke in the same way, but he's harsher with them, right? And he goes, I'm going to tear down this tower. Remember what the tower was? The tower was in the center of the city, and you could, if people, you could go into it and you could shoot down. We're going to see a judge, one of the judges killed by a rock thrown or a mill wheel thrown from the tower and stuff like that. And so apparently they ticked him off more because not only was he going to punish them, he said, I'm going to tear down this tower. But he's not going to win, right? All right. All right, there we go. Jeffrey.
Judges 8, 10 through 12. Now Ziba and Zamuna were at Kakor, and their enemies with them about 15,000, all who were left of all the army of the people of the east. For 120,000 men who drew the sword had fallen. Then Gideon went up by the road of those who dwelt of Nobah, and Jogbiha, and attacked the army while the camp was felt secure. Then Ziba and Zalmunna fled, and he pursued them, and he took them to the two kings of Midian, Ziba and Zalmunna, and routed the whole army.
Yeah, wow. So 120,000 of the Midianites and Amalekites are dead. You know, he has 300. Apparently, he still has 300 because the last verse said when he and the 300 came this way, they were tired. Obviously, he had some help when the other troops drove in, but here he's got 300 against 15,000, right? 15,000, and he's going to rout them too. This is the hand of the Lord. And so he captures these kings, and remember his promises that he said to the people. So, Steve.
Judges 8, 13 through 15. Then Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from the battle from the ascent of Heres, and he caught a young man of the men of Succoth and interrogated him. And he wrote down for him the leaders of Succoth and its elders, 77 men. Then he came to the men of Succoth and said, Here are Zelba and Zalmunna, about whom you ridiculed me, saying, Are the hands of Ziba and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your weary men?
What is Eden Crow is best? Again, I got this two cities, Succoth and Penuel. He's beat him here at Karkar, and now he's coming back with these two guys as captive, and he comes to Succoth. So he fulfills what he says. Jess.
And he took the elder and the thorns of the wilderness and briars with them, fought the men of Succoth, and he tore down the tower of Peniel and killed the men of the city. And he said to Ziba and Zalmunna, What kind of men were they whom you killed at Tabor? Saying, he resembled the son of the king of a king.
Okay, so he takes the 77 elders and takes them outside and whips them, right, with the briars, you know. Then he tears down the tower of Peniel, he said, and there he kills the men of the city. So I guess Succoth came off better. They just had wounded pride more than anything. And so he asked these two guys after it's done, what kind of men did you kill? And they said, we killed men like you that resembled this, you know, princes or sons of kings. There we go. And so Sarah.
Then he said, They were my brothers, the sons of my mother. As the Lord lives, if you had let them live, I would not kill you. And he said to Jether, his firstborn, Rise, kill them. But the youth would not draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was still a youth. So Zebah and Zalmunna said, Rise yourself and kill us, for as a man is, so is his strength. So Gideon arose and killed Zebah and Zalmunna, and took the crescent ornaments that were on their camels' necks.
Mhm. So he said, you killed these people that were like brothers to me, or they're part of our clan or whatever, and I would have let you live. So he tells his firstborn, kill him. But it says the youth, the word there is youth, would not draw a sword, for he's afraid. So they said, you kill us, you're the man. So he kills him, right? And he took the crescent ornaments that were on their camels' necks. Again, when you travel, you took bounty and booty or whatever you want to plunder, and you bedecked yourselves in jewels. So he takes this and he's exacted revenge. All righty, Shotzi.
Judges 8:22 through 24. Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, Rule over us, both you and your son, and your grandson also, for you have delivered us from the hand of Midian. But Gideon said to them, I will not rule over you, nor shall my son rule over you. The Lord shall rule over you. Then Gideon said to them, I would like to make a request of you, that each of you would give me the earrings from his plunder. For they had golden earrings because they were Ishmaelites.
Mhm. Didn't know that was a trait of Ishmaelites. They have golden earrings, but found out something new today. Okay, so the people at this point are grateful, right? So rollovers, both you and your son, and then your grandson, but this wasn't God's plan, right? God's plan was that he was the ruler of Israel. So at this point, Gideon doesn't. It says, don't do it, but give me a little bounty and I'll be happy. So they give him the earrings and everything, and he goes on to do his own thing. But now it gets kind of, we'll keep going. Bruce?
Judges 8:25-26. So they answered, We will gladly give them. And they spread out a garment, and each man threw into it the earrings from his plunder. Now the weight of the gold earrings that he had requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, besides the crescent ornaments, pendants, and purple robes which were on the kings of Midian, and besides the chains that were around their camels' necks.
So he got a pretty good booty for cleaning up, didn't he? He got judged, but he gets rewarded quite well. But maybe that doesn't do us great. Jeffrey.
Judges 8:27 and 28. Then Gideon made it up to an ephod and set it up in his city, Ophrah. And all Israel played the harlot with it there. It became a snare to Gideon and to his house. Thus Midian was subdued before the children of Israel, so that they lifted their heads no more. And the country was quiet for 40 years in the days of Gideon.
Mm-hmm. So kind of come to the end. But so Gideon takes some of this stuff he got and he made an ephod. And an ephod simply is a shirt, but kind of considered, I put here, a sacred vestment. This is a picture of a interpretation of Aaron's clothes, okay? The high priest Aaron, and the yellow is the ephod, okay? You can see it goes over the blue kind of dress and over his shirt sleeves. Upon that ephod was this gold plate that had the stones for the number of Israel, but somehow it meant like a holy vestment. One of the reasons I'll be out in that too. And so it's one of the reasons Protestant churches we don't have frocks, right? That because we're kind of, again, the priests had it. Well, we're all priests, right? You don't need a holy thing. I did hear a guy's argument for. He goes, when I go to church, I don't want a guy standing there looking like he's running a business meeting. So Anyway, but anyway, we tend not to do it. So he built this thing, and guess what? Israel begins to play the harlot with it. Who delivered Israel?
The
God.
Lord.
Yeah. Who led, Gideon along the way and helped him to come to this place of courage? God. And what does he do? He goes and sets this thing up. And it's just kind of a sad thing is how this can go to our head. But anyway, the country had quiet for 40 years after this. Steve.
Do you hear the train in the background from my microphone?
No.
Okay, then I'll go ahead and read. Judges 8:29 through 32. Then Jerubbaal, the son of Joash, went and dwelt in his own house. Gideon had 70 sons who were his own offspring, for he had many wives. And his concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son, whose name was Abimelech. Now Gideon, the son of Joash, died at a good old age and was buried in the tomb of Joash's father in Ophrah of the Abezrites.
Mm-hmm. Interesting enough, obviously he did well. Was wealthy. He has 70 sons. I don't think so. He had a lot of wives, and here he has a concubine, and that's concubine's name is Abimelech, and we're going to meet Abimelech next week. And he turns out not. I'll give you a little thing. He turned out not to be a good guy. Let's see, Melanie, you want to finish for us?
So it was, as soon as Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel again played the harlot with the Baals and made Baal-berith their god. Thus the children of Israel did not remember the Lord their God, who had delivered them from the hands of all their enemies on every side. Nor did they show kindness to the house of Jerubbaal, Gideon, in accordance with the good he had done for Israel.
Yeah, kind of sad, huh? We're going to see that. So they play the harlot. By the way, Baal-berith is literally Lord of the covenant. Who had a covenant with Israel? Jehovah, right? So it's kind of a smack in the face. But the Baal is just a name for a lord or whatever pagan god. And we're going to see that the children of Israel did not remember the Lord their God, and nor did they show kindness to Gideon. And that's where we're going to be next week. So appreciate it, guys. I got to go here in a second. Any quick comments or questions before we break? Everyone got their syllabus? Yeah, okay. I'm going to pray and we're going to close, okay? So, Father, thank you. Thank you that, you saw that you picked, as Shasi said, the unlikely of us and to use Gideon, Zerubbabel. And yet we also see that success can be a bad thing. And so, Father, we've won the lottery and being filled with the Holy Spirit and having you in our lives. Father, help us to keep a humble heart and to walk humbly before you, not to forget you and to forget all the awesome things you've done in our life. Bless this week for each and every one participating tonight. We thank you and bless you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. All right. Good night, guys. I've got to go.
Good night.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. God bless. All right.